The risk is actually fairly straightforward. A significant percentage of Arm's revenues come from China, and there are two. Arm has a specific risk and a general risk. The specific risk is that all of its revenues come from its JV in China, which it doesn't control, so it has no control effectively over its business in China, which is a risk all of its own. The second risk is the economic risk. The economy in China, and as I've written with my partner, Alistair Newton, many times, is at the moment the priorities of the Chinese government are loyalty to the party over the economy. And while that persists, the government in China is unlikely to take the kind of steps to really get the economy going. And you're seeing the results of that already. A weak economy in China with no recovery in sight. And that really remains the other risk for Arm, particularly in China. There is also the risk risk, which the previous speaker actually mentioned. That's a little bit more nuanced, largely because, yes, it's a risk. Yes, it's free. But you get what you pay for, i.e. when you license or you take the RISC-V architecture, you don't get very much. You've got to do an awful lot of work yourself to produce a product that can compete with Arm. So at the moment, it's attacking them from the low end. But the first two Chinese risks, I think, are the biggest ones for now.
Richard, just want to jump in on that and follow up with the RISC-V competition. There are backers of that through a consortium, the likes of Google, Qualcomm, NVIDIA. Just give us a sense of how this architecture is developing. You mentioned there is at the low end, but what kind of risk is it posing right now to Arm in the premium end?
At the moment, not much risk. And the reason for that is the Arm's argument for this is it is cheaper to license the full-blown IP from us than it is to take the free architecture from RISC-V and then build the rest. And there's a good argument for that because Arm is shipping in massive volume, so the development cost is spread over many, many more units. Now, in time, what has happened is the proposed acquisition of Arm by NVIDIA raised a lot of hackles in the industry, and it really galvanized interest in RISC-V. And so what you're seeing is a lot of the potential partners with Arm, who are dependent on Arm, are starting to think twice. Maybe we should have a second source just in case things start not going in our direction, or we have problems with Arm, or the lawsuit with Qualcomm is a reasonable argument for that. And so that's really what's going on. They're looking at potential as second source. But in terms of challenging on the premium end, they're a very long way away from that, in my opinion.
Richard, good morning. Is that why perhaps there's so much doubt amidst this IPO then as well in some sectors? I mean, you have the IPO in a time when AI and the chip makers are really seen as a big player in this time, and yet it feels as though, and has felt for a little bit of time, that this is a little bit difficult to get off the ground.
Yes, and that has been my opinion as well, largely because even at the original price, SoftBank was asking 96 times historic price-earnings ratio, which is probably higher for the forward number because the smartphone market is hurting Arm's revenues and profits this year. That really means that what SoftBank has been required to do is to sell Arm as an AI company like NVIDIA. Now, in the long term, absolutely. I'm a big proponent of running AI on end devices. It makes an awful lot of economic sense for the provider of the service, and also much more in general in terms of the quality of service, privacy and security, and so on and so forth. But those revenues are not accruing to Arm now. The reason why NVIDIA has gone up 200% this year is because it's blown earnings out massively 2 times on the fact that it's actually selling more chips than it can possibly make because of the AI demand. Arm's not seeing that yet. And so, it's difficult, in my opinion, when it comes to valuation, to justify charging a much higher valuation for Arm than NVIDIA when NVIDIA is seeing the AI revenues and Arm is not yet.